Well, I've broken another promise to myself. I said I wasn't going to buy Gran Turismo Sport. I did, and I reviewed it. And I said I wasn't going to pick up the Xbox One X, and I have. And I've come on to review it. Why did I do this? Well, I discovered that I had a Best Buy gift card that I had not used. I just found it in an old drawer that I was cleaning out. And I actually, and this is something that I always forget, I actually do make some money off of YouTube, so I pooled those two things together. And I got this for a little less than half off. And I figured for that price, let me be part of the launch, and who knows, maybe it will bring back the good feelings of old when I picked up consoles at launch. And if anything, it could just be a nice little diversion as we move into the winter months. So having done that, I figured I would follow in my tradition and come on here and, as always, give an unbiased and unpaid-for opinion about the product. So I'll start off with the positives. I think as Xbox has evolved from the launch of the Xbox One until this console, they really have done a nice job of making their front end very distinctive. A lot of people say, oh, it's not as good as PlayStation, it's too busy. Well, here they've definitely simplified it, and I would imagine that's the case on the Xbox One itself, but I haven't turned on my Xbox One original in quite some time. But they've cleaned up the user interface, but still kept it kind of lively, and I always thought it was more luxurious than the rather utilitarian PlayStation approach. Installation, very simple. The thing was well packed. And it was just a matter of plugging it in. It downloaded an update. Since I have this in my game room now rather than in my TV room, I was able to plug right into the router. And it took no time at all, although testing the wireless speeds are about what you would expect. Faster than PlayStation, but not as fast as a good computer or a laptop. My only complaint with the whole setup process was that the unit itself had a very large scratch right on the top of it, which definitely pissed me off because, look, you're buying this, monster, quote-unquote, console, this luxurious Xbox. There's really no excuse for that kind of handling, but I decided to keep it, and I'll get into those reasons a little bit later. Now, obviously, the question is, does this console make the games look significantly better? And that really needs to be answered per game. I was happy to see that some games were indeed enhanced for this console right within the launch week. And so one of the positives is that if you have an Xbox library, a sizable Xbox library, I wouldn't call it sizable, but I have all of the main big releases for the system. Just a matter of downloading the updates for those, and you have an enhanced game on the Xbox One X. Speaking here about Halo 5, Titanfall 2, Battlefield, World War I are I think, kind of the main examples. Killer Instinct, another one. That was actually Killer Instinct. To get the 4K patch on that was a huge download. But in a lot of ways, I said the transfer process or the setup process was easy. The transfer, I had an external hard drive where I kept most of my games on the Xbox One, unplugged it, plugged it into the X, and I was good to go. I could play those games while the updates downloaded, and then they patched themselves overnight. And sort of day two, I had enhanced Xbox One games in 4K. So how do they look? The enhanced games look very good. It is a noticeable difference if you know what to look for, and it's going to depend a lot on what you came from. My Xbox One was hooked up to my OLED television, and honestly it looked really good. So the only thing that I'm seeing are improved frame rates. Not so much in Halo 5. I think if you watch the Digital Foundry analysis of that, Halo 5 always ran at 60 FPS. But you're getting sharper visuals, and you can definitely see that. The improvement for me was in Titanfall 2, a game that I was shocked by. I thought it was just another kind of Me Too shooter, but downloaded it off of EA Access and didn't really play through all of it initially, so I'm happy to go back to it. And that game really feels the best out of all of them. Runs at a slick 60 frames per second. Television is reporting 4K. I don't think it has HDR just yet, but it's a great game and it's gorgeous looking. Even if you read some of the stuff online, there was a problem where it was sort of dynamically changing the resolution and it was dropping below 1080p at certain points. I didn't notice that, but what I noticed was a smoother, sharper experience to my eyes. Now, when I say sharper, in my game room, I'm not sitting as far away from the television, so I am benefiting from the 4K a little bit more here, and I'm also looking and kind of, getting near the screen, and you can see those improvements. But if you are just swapping out an Xbox One, from a standard home theater room or something like that, or a standard living room, and you're not as close to the screen as I am, maybe those things won't be as evident. Killer Instinct, same difference. There was a slight improvement. Forza Horizon 3, I had never played that in HDR before, so for me, that looked very good. Doesn't have a 4K patch, but visuals looked very, very solid. Strangely enough, NHL 17 was a game that I think really impressed me, if only because the fact that there's so much white in that game caused the OLED screen protection to kick in, so perhaps I never saw the game as bright and sharp as I've seen it here. Halo's great. Another surprise was the backwards compatibility. They've actually enhanced Halo 3 for Xbox One X, and downloading that and playing that, it was just a matter of putting my disc in, and it downloaded a patch, and I was good to go. That looked shockingly impressive. They did a good job with that. You would almost think it is of this generation in certain parts. It looks that good. Now, the other games that are, backwards compatible haven't had that treatment. So, like Halo ODST was just Halo ODST as I remember it, which, incidentally, not a very good game. But I look forward to seeing what they do with other backwards compatible games that they enhance for the system. But I would say, I'm talking bad about ODST, but actually it was indistinguishable from what I remember on the original 360. And I haven't, I've only played the Halo games like Halo Reach, Halo 3, and ODST. I haven't really seen what else is out there, but it looks, very, very good. There's no or very few hiccups. I think there was kind of a loading hiccup with Halo 3, but after that it ran very well. Now, a couple of other aspects of it. They are rolling out original Xbox support, so I will eventually try that. I have to go dig out some of my original Xbox games. There's only a couple. I think Star Wars, maybe the Star Wars BioWare game, and possibly Halo 2. And I definitely have Halo 2, so I will have to find that and give that a try. I think another important fact to mention is it does have HD Blu-ray with HDR, and I did test that out. I only have 2 movies, and they looked on par with I had a Samsung UHD Blu-ray, and looked just as good. Playback was smooth. Loading was quick, so I think this could be certainly a viable UHD Blu-ray player if you wanted to use it for that purpose. And the controller they give you, to me, has been upgraded slightly. It has a slightly different texture to it compared to the old Xbox One controllers. I don't know, the back feels a little bit more grippy. It's not that sort of soft touch material that's on the Elite controller, but it feels like a very mild upgrade. Like that you're holding a second, a newer generation controller, even though functionally it's the same. And I think as a final positive, and this is I think very surprising, and one of the reasons why I'm going to keep this system and not return it because of the scratch, is that, at least on the one I have, it is incredibly cool and incredibly quiet. When I compare it to my PlayStation 4 Pro, I mean, certain games on the PlayStation 4 Pro turn that thing into it has like a jet engine, and I have a pretty well ventilated entertainment system. It's not like crammed into a small wooden compartment. Both systems really have enough room to breathe. And, I have been pushing the Xbox One X as a combination of having some time off from work and no social life at the moment. So I've been gaming pretty hard on it. And after, good 3-4 hours with the Xbox One X, I pointed one of those kind of infrared temperature readers at the sides. I guess it vents out the side. And based on what I saw, the processor is towards the back. And I got about 37 Celsius at the sides and only about 43 at the back, which is pretty cool. And putting my hand on it, warm, but certainly not hot. And again, I'm comparing it to the PlayStation 4 Pro, which gets very hot. I did not do a temperature reading on that because I haven't had it on now that I have the Xbox One X, but I will have to do that. Maybe I'll update the comments section. Definitely when comparing it to sort of another high-end piece of electronics, my Denon receiver, can't think of the model number, but it's one of those in-command, 3300, 4300 receivers, and that gets very hot, uncomfortably hot to the touch. In fact, I had to put a ventilation system on the receiver, but this, again, after hours, very cool. And I read that the cooling system, it's a vapor chamber cooling system, and supposedly it's whatever fans and heat sinks, whatever they've put in there, actually modulates the cooling based on the efficiency of the particular chip in the machine. So they say that because of that, your results will vary. If you get a good chip, it'll be cool and quiet. If you have one that puts off more heat, you'll hear the fans. So I don't hear the fans. And again, very cool to the touch. And I think those are reasonable temperatures. So I'm going to keep this because maybe I won the processor lottery here. I'm not sure about that. But it is, in that regard, I would say a significant upgrade over the PS4 Pro. And again, in these games that have been enhanced, they look better, in my opinion. I mean, again, it's I haven't done a side-by-side comparison, so take it for what it's worth. I don't double buy games. I have games for one system or the other. So you can look to the digital foundries of the internet for that. But just as a usability, account, yeah, I'm not hearing any fan noise. The room isn't getting hotter, and that's another thing I noticed with the PS4 Pro. When I've got the PS4 Pro on, receiver, television, the room gets uncomfortably warm. And when I swap out the PS4 with this system, I'm not noticing, any kind of change in the ambient temperature of the room. So I think it's a nicely engineered machine, at least initially. And now we get to, I think, some of the downsides of the console. The library of games hasn't changed, and I think for as strong as the exclusive games lineup was for the original Xbox, it has, basically come to a stop. And in a lot of ways, the Xbox One was a dead system. I mean, I hadn't turned on my original Xbox One in months, and it's just not a system that I used a lot, even though I did like some of the games on it. And actually, the benefit to me personally was I never finished Forza Horizon 3. I never finished Titanfall. I never finished Battlefield. So there's a lot of stuff that I still had to play. But I would suspect that if you played all of those games and you were waiting for something new or different, you're going to keep on waiting. Yes, they came out with Cuphead, interesting looking game. I haven't played it. Super Lucky's Tale, which I played on the Oculus, and it was a good game, and I might consider picking it up for this system. They're changing up Recore, which I had never played. I guess that's a a couple of years old now itself. It's a game that feels, I did actually pick that up, and it feels kind of outdated in a way. Frame rate isn't that great, but it does have HDR, and pretty impressive HDR, and they're going to do another patch to bring it up to 4K. So, that's something you can look at, but aside from those games, there's nothing new or interesting, and you could, in the future, buy your, I guess, third-party AAA games on this because it will run the best outside of PC. But, if you're someone who's gone through the Xbox One library, this, is just going to be another Xbox One. So I'm not sure, there's a ton of value there. And then if you have an Xbox One S, or you have a PlayStation 4 Pro, how big is the visual upgrade here? And I would say that it's just because it's noticeable doesn't mean that it's significant enough to plop down $500. And I think it's good. I mean, I'm happy to have a second Xbox in my game room, and I'm going to be looking forward to playing and finishing a lot of these games that I haven't played. But I will say, if you're looking to be absolutely floored by the visual quality of these games, it's not that big a difference, with a slight caveat. And that caveat is, I guess it's going to depend a lot on what display you came from going to the Xbox One X. So if you had your Xbox One, I guess, attached to maybe a LED TV that was about 5 or 6 years old, and you just got a 4K HDR television and you're going to hook this up to it, I think you will be impressed to a degree, because that 5, 6, 7-year-old technology is nothing like what's coming out in televisions today. I think similarly, if you are purely a console gamer and you can play Halo in a rock-solid 60 FPS, you can play Titanfall 2 in what to me appears to be a rock-solid 60 FPS and a very stable resolution. Again, maybe other people are having different experiences with it. I think that is going to be impressive, and I think that will definitely be something that you'll value. On the other hand, I have a gaming PC with GTX 1080, so I've already experienced, the super visuals, the rock-solid frame rates, and it was really nothing new to me to get that on a console, although it's impressive to see that, we finally have a console that can produce that experience to various degrees. But what we're seeing is that 4K, 60 FPS, HDR is a very, very difficult target to hit. And I think some people found, there's checkerboarding in this game, or there's a dynamic resolution, so you're not really getting, true 4K. The question, of course, is, does true, solid 4K matter to you? And I've always said 4K, to me, is kind of a gimmick. I wish they had developed OLED technology and HDR, and then at some point in the future, maybe jump the resolution. I think 4K is still very, very hard to do. And I guess if you look at the pure specs and you look at the work that's, again, put out by Digital Foundry, this is not a completely 100%, native 4K system. It seems like some games are, some games aren't. But I do think, and I'll give Microsoft credit, I think they've rehabilitated the Xbox brand, and they've made just the whole experience of using Xbox, I think, so much better than it was on the 360. You have the backwards compatibility with 2 generations. You have the kind of play anywhere, buy a game on the Xbox, play it on the computer. You've got game streaming from the computer to all of the Xbox consoles. So I think it's now a very consumer-friendly product. You don't have the spy cam and mic, picking up everything you say anymore. I mean, that was an absolute disaster. You don't have the unnecessary and forced integration of, TV, with the unit. So it's I think, an excellent game console. It's a capable streaming device, but I would caution people who think it's going to completely transform the way they enjoy their Xbox games. I will say that certainly if you don't have an Xbox and you want to jump in, this is the system to get. And if you are making the jump to 4K, I think it's a fair purchase. If you have an Xbox One S, it's really up to you whether you want to plop down the cash for this. For me personally, it works. It's a kind of a nice addition, secondary system to play these games. I've certainly been enjoying it. I don't regret the purchase, and I look forward to seeing how it evolves. I'm looking forward to seeing maybe another one or two Microsoft exclusives that really push this system. And I hope that they stick with it for a while. I would hate to buy another Xbox every 2 years. Nonetheless, for someone who is very, very critical of video games, I don't feel any way burned by this. I think it is a very solid piece of hardware, and it just depends on what your personal usage scenario is, what you're coming from, and then you can decide whether it's worth the purchase or the upgrade. But certainly no serious complaints on this end.